good morning to you and welcome to yet another very interesting day on Benue television. We are very happy indeed that you are there watching us live. And by the grace of God, we will thrive from here till it's going to be our destination mark on the television. We are going to talk about the education sector in Benue State. What do you know about the Benue State education sector? What improvements have we had in the recent past? And of course, what has been there before now. An assessment will be carried out both at the moment and in retrospect to determine what progress has been made so far in that sector. Remember that we have a ministry that is manning the affairs of education in Benue State. And this time around, it is called Ministry of Education and Knowledge Management. How well has the knowledge in Benue managed through the ministry? What are the projects on ground? How much of the support is His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Benue State, Reverend Father Dr. Hyacinth Alia, given to the education sector? Remember, this is captured in his 7-point agenda, where education is given topmost priority. These and more will be given a very close look at by the incumbent Commissioner for Education in Benue State, talking about Reverend Dr. Frederick Ikian, who is going to talk to the Benue people concerning the education sector in Benue. My name is Japhet Wahom, and
good morning, Daybreak family. Welcome to the Wednesday edition. I was about to say, Japhet, please be winding up.
Yeah,
good
of
morning,
course,
Japhet. How
of
are
course.
you?
Yeah, very good morning to you, Maureen. When we have an august guest as in the capacity of the Honorable
I felt
Commissioner,
like you're already giving me a citation.
much needs to be given so that the people understand clearly what the discussion actually portends for the Benue people.
No, you're right.
I think the Honorable Commissioner is already, in the waiting room, and so we have to just talk briefly and have him ushered in. Let's talk about what is happening at the Senate. The former chief whip of the Senate is no longer the chief whip and has been suspended by the All Progressives Congress. And
well,
of
actually,
course,
I see him to resign as well too.
Yes, and then the Senate has actually, asked him to resign, and he is no longer the chief whip of the Senate.
Yeah.
He has been given another appointment as at yesterday. He's now the chairman, Committee on Tourism. And of course, his counterpart from Borno North, Monguno, has taken over as the chief whip. It is quite of a gamut of political intrigues, and what is happening.
And how would I put it? When he has been, throwing barbs at the presidency, I sort of saw this coming. I just didn't see it coming this soon, but I kind of saw it coming.
But if one may ask very briefly, what's the place of critics or criticism in politics? This is democracy.
Yeah.
And I think I followed the interview when he was hosted on a Rise television. Okay. He had said it categorically that he knows the pedigree of the man President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and he is not acting like himself this time around. That he has known him back in Lagos and in all the administrative positions he has held, and so he's expecting more from him. And then I didn't see Ndume as blaming the president for some of the issues he had raised, on national TV. He had said there are a group of people around the president that are blurring his view, not allowing him to see the true picture of what is happening. So I was actually thinking that it's just a matter of saying the president, okay, Senator Ali, you come over, let's have a discussion. If there is anything I need to know, talk to me. That's exactly the kind of scenario I personally was expecting.
When I say I saw it coming, but I didn't see it coming this soon, is because prior to his suspension, he did alert that the budget was padded, which of course they refuted, and that led to his suspension. After which he was brought back, and then not too long after he was brought back, he now made this very indicting, accusation, let me say revelation, that truly the president is not aware that Nigerians are actually sleeping hungry. And like you said, this is politics and we are practicing a democracy, so critique is definitely allowed.
Yes.
But the fact that he made that, a revelation was not going to sit down well with APC, especially the Senate members.
Yes.
So, like when I say I saw it coming, but I didn't see it coming this soon, I really saw it coming, because at this point in time, it's looking like Senator Ali Ndume is yapping too much. So let's find a way.
But of course, and Ali Ndume is one of the oldest senators. Since 2003, he has been there, and you should know that he has gathered lots of experience. Apart from his being a party man and in the All Progressives for quite some time.
He has been a legislator.
Yes, he has been a legislator.
A lot of experience.
And the role of a legislator is for you to present your views as bare as they should be presented. So, you see, the merits and demerits of what Senator Ali Ndume said is what I'm trying to fathom out.
I get.
Did he say something against the government?
No,
did he say something against the APC? Did he say something about the Senate? This should have been the parameters. He
was just painting the true picture of what's the economic reality in the country.
Yes,
definitely. Which I felt that the Senate should have, if they were going to do due diligence, but just look into it like, objectively, and not feel like he's trying to put the slight on the red chamber.
And finally, I was thinking that the APC as a party, is supreme to the existence of democracy at that level. So now, this is a member of the APC. He has done something wrong which you have perceived, according to you. Call him to order. Could this be the punishment?
That's the punishment.
Why is it coming at this time?
That's the punishment.
And it was not clearly spelled as to whether it's because of what he had said. The revelations is made.
Obviously, that is where the whole thing came from.
But of course,
if the party was going to ask him to resign, they would have done that a long time ago.
Yes.
But why did they wait till he made this revelation? That tells you that the party actually did not find it funny, or let me say, they didn't find it comfortable that he has.
But Bola Ahmed Tinubu in himself is a man that welcomes criticism. He's a man that is a listening president. There are signs that he listens to what the people say and is able to adjust.
Say, but I'll tell you that this is Nigeria. A lot of things happen that sometimes even boggles the mind.
It's all right. I think we need to go on a break and have the Honorable Commissioner and ushered in so that we can begin our conversation here on Benue Television. Please stay with us for more.
It is the second time Benin City will play host to the 79th General Assembly of Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, BON. Top media practitioners across the country have gathered here to decide the fate of the industry in the nearest future. The two-day event comes under the theme Navigating the Challenges of Broadcasting in Nigeria and is expected to come up with a communique that will be presented to the federal government to address some pressing issues affecting the broadcast industry. Governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, represented by the Commissioner for Communication and Orientation, Mr. Chris Nekare, responding to the earlier request made by BON, promises to make everything possible to assist at the state level.
The role of Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria is paramount in ensuring that our airways are filled with content that educates, entertains, and empowers our citizens. Through our collective efforts, we have the power to influence public opinion, drive social change, and uphold values of democracy and freedom of expression. In Edo State, we have remained committed to supporting the media. We have promoted free, independent, diverse media landscape, particularly during this critical time in the build-up to the September 21 governorship election.
In a goodwill message, the Director General, Nigeria Broadcasting Commission, NBC, Charles Ebube, promises to strengthen partnership with BON.
Our common goal is clear. It is to enhance the quality and the reach of broadcasting in Nigeria, upholding the principles of fairness, accuracy, and inclusivity. The NPC is committed to fostering a regulatory environment that not only ensures compliance and accountability, but also encourages innovation and growth within the industry.
Chairman of BON and Director General, Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Comrade Salihu Dembos, represented by Vice Chairman BON and Group Managing Director DA Communication, Chief Tony Akioto, describes the present state of BON as that of a person in an intensive care unit that needs urgent assistance from the government.
Broadcasting is going through perilous times.
Welcome back to the program. This is Daybreak Benue on Benue Television, and we are very happy to be here to reach out to you once again. Remember, we are talking about the Benue education sector, and this is one of the very important sectors in our everyday life in Benue State. This is where knowledge that is being shared across board is acquired. And so, as sensitive as it is, we will be having a discussion around what is the Ministry of Education and what is the education sector generally doing to ensure that we have a better education in Benue State. Education that competes favorably and is at pair with other states that are doing well. And so I like to say here that we have the Honorable Commissioner in the house talking about Reverend Dr. Frederick Ikan, Honorable Commissioner for Education and Knowledge Management. I'd like to welcome you once again to Benue Television's flagship program.
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's indeed a warm pleasure. Sure. Now, Honorable Commissioner, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that the Benue State Ministry of Education, which is saddled with the responsibility of overseeing the affairs of education in the state, was established in 1976. And then at its inception, you know that the name was Ministry of Education and of course Science and Technology. That was how it started, Ministry of Education. And then later in 2015, it metamorphosed into Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. Now that you are the helm of affair in this ministry, it is Ministry of Education and Knowledge Management. Now, all of these nomenclatures and caveats have their various meanings based on the agenda of the present government. Now, you happen to be the Honorable Commissioner in this sector. Could you tell us the place of education in Benue, where it was, and now that you have taken over, where it is?
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to engage with you, the television house, the Benue populace, and Nigeria at large. Like you have rightly said, education is the foundation of life generally. The wise man says, it is the questions and not the answers that bring knowledge. So, it is only in education that you'll be taught to ask the right questions in order to acquire the right answers, in order to identify the direction towards which life can go. So, since we came, we have been asking questions. The various captures that we have stated just now, whether it is Ministry of Education or Education, Science and Technology or Education and Knowledge Management, all of these are like questions trying to capture the essence of education in Nigeria generally and in Benue particularly. So whether it was called education or science and technology or knowledge management, all are an attempt to identify that which is the kernel of education, that which should form the direction towards which we can all advance. But I will not talk so much about the past. I'll talk more about what we have here today. You also recall that during the last time I came, I gave you an update of what was happening at the time. I want to say that the story hasn't changed. And what do I mean? Our search for the improvement of education is still on. In other words, the story has not changed because we have not deviated. We are still on course. We are still on track, trying to find out the real problems of education in Benue State. During the last time that I came, I told you of dilapidated infrastructures of our educational system. Now, we needed to identify what the problem was. How come that certain buildings that we inherited from the colonial era are still standing and providing accommodation for education in the modern era, where high tech, has entered or become the foundation for education, where our children today are competing globally, and yet the environment of education has not really changed. And here I'm talking about both systemic issues and other infrastructural issues that we encountered, and we discovered that education in our time is in shambles. It ought not to be so. You also recall that during that time I talked about the budget. Education happens to be the second sector that has received the highest funding from the present government of the governor, Reverend Father Dr. Hyacinth Yomem Alia. Health came first and education came second, but 15% of that budget allocated to education. So we needed to take stock of what was on ground, and like I mentioned a while ago, dilapidation and the lack of motivation for both teachers and the learners, and several other factors that we came to meet, and we're still on the drawing table, if I may say, because the system has so degenerated that it will require an extra effort, an extra step in identifying the problems, analyzing them, trying to gain insight into how they evolved before we can apply the solution that we are bringing. Of course, without a vision, there can never be any advancement. So out of the dilapidation, out of the rot, out of the disintegration, as it were, of educational structures in Benue, we are putting things together to gain proper insight and bring out a solution that will stand the test of time. So by way of introduction, this is what I would say.
That's right. Now, Honorable Commissioner, you know that the Benue people are they are a community of people who are in love with education. When you go to the outside world, you discover that we are doing excellently good in those places, and it's because of the foundation that we got from here.
Sure.
Fortunately, most of the governors that came on board were lovers of education. Reverend Father Moses Oshio Adasu was a teacher and loved education, and that's the reason why we have Benue State University there. Now, the present governor is one who loves education a lot. Let's know the turnaround you intend to bring on board under the watch of Governor Hyacinth Yomem Alia, because education needs not just a boost but a turnaround under the watch of a combination of you and His Excellency.
Sure. Okay, thank you once again. Going beyond the late Reverend Father Moses Oshio Adasu, the governor of Benue State, going beyond that, we find Apollos Ape Aku, the first civilian governor of Benue State in 1979. He himself was a teacher, and as soon as he came on board, he envisioned, his vision for the education sector was huge. He being a teacher, in fact, it was the late Ape Aku that first envisioned the University of Technology for Benue as a state. Unfortunately, that dream was never really practically actualized, and then he left the stage. But at least he started something, which later was changed to University of Jos, Makudi campus. Much later, it became the University of Agriculture and moved to its present site. So when Oshio Adasu came on board, he sustained the tempo by establishing Benue State University, that is still standing here today. And other successive governors also made a contribution, beginning with George Akume, Gabriel Towuasoswam, Samuel Otom, and now we are here to advance this same course. It is a journey that started even in the colonial era. We learned ABC, we learned the English language, we learned the Western life, and we've imbibed them, and today it's no longer possible to live outside of the enclave of the Western world or of the Western culture. So education has come to stay, and we all know that without school, the life cannot thrive. Secondly, in our olden traditional life modes, we used to have farming plots that were bequeathed to succeeding children or generation, where our parents farmed in this portion, next year they moved to the other, shifting cultivation. Now you observe that this very studio where we're seated now, many years ago, was a farmland for a particular family. But the studio has overtaken it because of the new forms of life. The people who own this plot of land as a farmland, none of them can ever come to claim again. Why? There is a new tendency towards life, and it is education that has become the farmland. In other words, the classrooms have become the formative environment where people can be formed to approach life generally. In other words, I'm trying to trace the very importance of education as a foundation for life issues generally. So, like I said again a while ago, that when we came, we discovered that the challenge was enormous. And since most of the things we need to do boil down to money, the governor decided to increase the funding for education from a meager less than 10% of funding. The governor brought it up to 15%, and it is only in this year 2024 we are anticipating an increase in the budgetary allocation for education in the coming years.
So can you let us in on some of the challenges that you met on the ground?
Yes, one of the challenges derives from lack of funding, where teachers were no longer trained, where infrastructures were dilapidated, where motivation in terms of salary was not there, no incentive, no teaching materials, none of those things existed. That teachers will go to school and have no seats, so that even infrastructures had a serious challenge. And if you went around Benue in the last 1 year, just before the last 1 year, it was indeed a shame. And I remember that I visited some schools and I saw students, secondary school students, perching on the windows because there were no seats in their classrooms, where the pavements were destroyed and there was sand in the class. I will not want to mention schools at the moment so that I don't embarrass those people in those places. But if you go around Benue and watch and look out, for these things yourself, you come back shedding tears. Why do I say so? It's indeed a pity that in the 80s, when some of us went to secondary school, there was some degree of decency. And if you stretch back in the 70s, when I went to primary school, there was dignity. Nigeria was still evolving. I went to primary school in 1974. We used to use a slate and chalk. We used our hands, fist, to clean the slate and write again. From that era till now, one would expect that there should have been an astronomical change completely from what used to be to what is in the new world. Unfortunately, we did not get to that point. So today, we are deeply concerned, but we cannot be lamenting the past. We need to put something on the table. So we have increased funding for education. Part of the increase is the issue of counterpart funding with universal basic education in Abuja, here represented by State Universal Basic Education Board, where interventions from the federal government get into the state. And the major intervention is that of infrastructural development. When we came on board, we learned and established that the allocation for 2022 and 2023 were not accessed. So we interacted with the officers in Abuja, UBEC in Abuja, and established what was. It was to the tune of over 5 billion naira. And the present government, under the leadership of Adalia, decided to pay that counterpart fund. As I speak with you right now in the studio, already there's a process ongoing in order to allocate some of these schools to individuals who have the capacity in order to upgrade the infrastructural, the state of those classrooms and schools, so that they can become a thing and a place of attraction.
Would that be a PPP arrangement?
No. It's not PPP yet. We have the money to send out contractors who renovate our schools, do installations for us, upgrade the systems, upgrade the infrastructure, and bring to a point where education can become attractive.
That's all right.
So for now, that is it.
Now, Honorable Commissioner, you made quite an exhaustive, insight into the state of education in Benue State. Now, you said something that caught my attention. You talked about an astronomical progress in the state of education as against then and now. Now, speaking of that, the primary school education sector now, I stand to be corrected, but it's now the universal basic education now, is the bedrock of any educational sector.
Yeah.
Benue State is not an exception. Now, if you look at what is happening, or let me say what has happened over the years, like you said, there has been a degeneration. So the primary education sector is nothing to write home about. In those days, I stand to be corrected, there used to be a government teachers college at what is now known as the second campus of Benue State University, and it was responsible for birthing and giving rise to qualified teachers that ended up passing wealth of experience and knowledge to students. Now, given that the primary education is the bedrock of what should be a vibrant educational sector, what are you doing specifically in that regard? I'm asking this question because some time ago, I think in May or April, I stand to be corrected as well, we had 4 bright young girls who represented Benue State through Nigeria at the debate in Jakarta. And when I went through their profile, it was surprising that they're all from primary schools, public primary schools, and this is something that is very instructive. So what are you doing specifically to bring back the dignity and glory of primary schools, public primary schools specifically in Benue State?
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to begin by saying that the era of UPE, as they used to call it, the GTC that you talked about, by way of policy was phased out by the federal government of Nigeria. The idea was to step up the standard and the model of education. It is that GTC that transformed into colleges of education today. Now the College of Education is a little higher than the GTC, Government Teachers Teachers College, that we used to have. In other words, Nigeria is aware and abreast with its own challenges of education and of the need to bring relevant innovations, so to say, in order to apply to it. So in Benue also, you recall that in the days of Apereko, there used to be a government teachers college here in Makudi that you pointed to. There was one in Ankpa and in Katsina as well. All of these have changed. Even the one in Ankpa was upgraded to a college of education in Katsina. And in the course of administering Benue, successive government also added value to this. We have a college of education in Ojo. So presently we have 2 state colleges of education where the fundamentals of teaching, the teaching profession, are bettered and communicated to Benue indigenes and all others who would want to enter into the teaching profession. Secondly, we are also in the process of recognizing teaching as a profession that somebody can enter into deliberately, not end up being a teacher because he or she could not gain employment elsewhere. So we have carved this out very clearly, that teaching is a profession to be entered into by those who are called into that profession, not people who have no other choice, no alternative, and have just resigned to mere teaching in order to put bread on the table. It is beyond that. So this is one of the things that we have done. Secondly, the federal government itself is also concerned. So we have restructured education again. It used to be 6-3-3-4. 6 years of primary education, 3 years of first level of secondary education, 3 years of senior secondary education, 4 years in the university training. But now it is no longer 6-3-3-4. It is now 9-3-4. In other words, basic education has been upgraded to a 9-year program. So once a student or a child enrolls in school, he is not supposed to graduate or receive a certificate until after 9 years, which is called basic 9.
So do you think that this restructuring is actually in line with modern day reality?
Sure. It is a reflection of the need of modern day realities. We have people who have done researches, and the government has not rested on its oars. It is still searching for a credible, relevant solution that can address the myriad, as it were, of the challenges in education. So restructuring is one of them. The second aspect of the restructuring, where the federal government is also concerned about skills acquisition. We have spoken a lot of grammar in Nigeria from 1960 till now. It has led us nowhere. We feel deeply challenged when we hear that technological devices like this are the products of secondary school students, boys and girls in the Western and Asian world. The handsets that you use, we hear reliably that they are the research products of students in secondary school. So Nigeria cannot continue to be a dumping ground or only acquiring what others are producing in the Western world. We must also be trained to bring about solution to the table, so that other, clients can also come to consume what we have in our country. More so that we can also showcase our talents, our abilities, our capacities, and our competencies can enter into the world and be felt. So the federal government is also concerned and launched a new program, which we're also trying to domesticate in Benue now. It is Learn to Work. In other words, what skills are taught from primary school. This is far beyond what we used to do as handwork in those days, where we used to learn how to produce baskets or mats or beads or tablecloths or those kind of things. It is far beyond that. In the course of that, in our time, the things certainly became monetized, where teachers or owners of schools decided that students should pay money, and then their mats were allotted them. Today we live in a technological world. We must therefore expose our little ones right from inception, right from the time they are entering school, that basic education level, to technological opportunities of engagement, so that they are able to think out for themselves and also get going. That program was launched only a few months ago, and it's going to be domesticated under SUBEB. Here, I was there in Abuja myself, together with the chairman of SUBEB, and we participated in that program. And the program is being unbundled at the moment. In the next in the next session, beginning from September, that program will also be launched. So this reformation has also brought about a wide effect in this sector, because children will no longer be playful merely with objects, but they will be playful constructively, engaging their minds as to how to make a contribution to the problem of society generally, and in specific terms, technologically.
Okay. Honorable Commissioner, still in the light of technological advancement, I know that being someone who has education at the heart, and we would really like to make an impact as the Honorable Commissioner for Education and Knowledge Management. I'd like to get your take. What is the template for science and technology specifically? Because we are in the science era, whether we like it or not. Technology is now the new thing. So what is your template, and what do you want to achieve by the end of 4 years as Honorable Commissioner for Education and Knowledge Management?
Thank you very much. Sometime last year, we got to the discussion table again, and the federal government is concerned about technological advancement and innovation. So we have identified the gaps and have decided therefore that there should be 90% science and technical education in Nigeria and 10% grammar schools. And because of this, we have gone back to the table through Science and Technical Education Board here in the state in order to upgrade our technical schools. Presently, as I speak, the state governor has given a directive, and I am working on it, to be able to relocate our Science and Technical College here at the campus of Benue State University to a new site in order to upgrade the facilities, to upgrade the machinery, to bring prominence to it, and to give emphasis to technical education. Some of these things are things that cannot manifest in 1 year, but like you rightly said, maybe in 4 years' time. The technical education runs a 6-year program. So at the end of the 6 years, we'll be able to turn out artisans, people who can do basic welding for us, carpentry, refrigerator and air conditioning, welding, motor mechanics, radio and television, and electrical installations. This is our concern, that at the end of our the first 4-year tenure, we would have turned out students, artisans, skillful young men and women who can take responsibility over the basic needs of our society, including professions like medicine, which are the foundations of building engineering and architecture and mechanical engineering. I went to a technical school, so I know the value of technical education. It gave me a clearer perspective to the issues of life, because we didn't just study grammar, but there was this hands-on engagement in school. We were able to produce something, and it gave us pride that, oh, me, like this, I can produce a thing like this. So it gave that joy, that sense of fulfillment, and that is what we want to bring back to the Benue child, so that in the end we can be very proud and we'll see very practically, physically, the advancements that we have made. So technical education is right now at the front burner, which is what we are pursuing.
It's all right. Honorable Commissioner, we shall revisit technical education, and because technical education and science, core sciences, are actually what the nations are looking up to. That's what brings about revolution, even economically.
Sure.
Yeah, let's talk about the place of STEM. Where you know, science, technical education, and for both girls and boys. It is understood in this climb that most of these hardcore technological or science-oriented disciplines are actually meant for the men. The perception is that the men are stronger, which people who are educated see this as the opposite.
Yeah.
You see that our girls are not well incorporated into some of these core science oriented disciplines. What are you doing in that regard to ensure that you place both genders at pair when it comes to STEM?
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I know that this question stems from the provisions of our society. We run a patriarchal society, and it is not matriarchal. In other words, emphasis is given to the male gender, to the point that even girls themselves sometimes resign from certain professions. They say, no, I am a woman. There is that lack of self-esteem in certain professions. But it is also changing, because one of the thematic areas of concern for our education in this time is the girl child education. It has been very slow. It has come, a long way. But we can boast of a few girls that have entered into this profession, the technical profession. When I went to technical college in the early 80s, we had a lot of girls that were learning motor mechanics, fitting and machining, carpentry, and even welding and agricultural, skills. Girls were involved. So we are still on track, that we have not pushed aside the girls. If you go to the government technical college here in Makurdi, you see a few girls. But because of this thematic area of girl child education, the sensitization has stepped up. It's been upgraded. It's been brought to the consciousness of parents and of children themselves. We hear of a few mechanics, say in Lagos or in Abuja, who are women. In fact, even here in Makurdi, there used to be women who were taxi drivers when the taxi, used to function here in Makurdi town. One particular lady that was a taxi driver, very popular from Ankwa Quarters Junction to Low Cost and Naka Road. She used to drive, and the people patronized her, and one or two other girls joined. If you go to Mechanic Village, you find one or two places where girls are bold enough, have penetrated that patriarchal thinking, and have entered into the world of men, and are also doing their best. So our concern stems from the fact that girl child education needs to be given attention, and we're working on it. And because of this, some teachers are women, lecturers are women. So there is no profession that locks out the female gender.
Do you have specific programs in mind to encourage the girl child before you exit your office? What would you do for the girl child education in Benue?
It is the thematic area of, there are several themes that we are dealing with. For instance, we are dealing with the issues of out of school children. We are dealing with these issues of IDP. We are dealing with issues of science and technical education. We are dealing with issues of ICT. We are dealing with issues of basic education. The fundamentals to all of these themes vary. So the girl child education is one of them. So to deal with this particularly, we are now connected with the Federal Ministry of Education under a program called Agile, Adolescent Girls Initiative for Learning and Empowerment. So during the last time that we worked on this, the governor himself signed a letter that we wrote to the Minister of Finance, to the Minister of Education, and to that particular office to connect us with that program. So we are still working it out, and I'm sure that before September, the MOU would have been signed, and by September, when we are resuming the school, we will domesticate Agile program here in Benue. I will not talk much about this until we do it. I'll come back to the studio again to give you an update as to the particulars and the specific things that would have unbundled for the Benue Girl Child under Adolescent Girls Initiative for Learning and Empowerment, Agile.
It's all right. Going by your antecedents, Honorable Commissioner, you uphold quality a whole lot. Now, let's be very realistic now. Tell us about the quality of education in Benue State. And I know as a man of God and one who is given this position, you will tell us nothing but the truth. What do you think is the quality level of education in Benue State? And apart from that, you may be kind enough to also tell us, if you are asked to place Benue amongst other states in Nigeria in terms of education, where do you think we'll find ourselves?
Okay, thank you very much. There's no point shying away from issues of this kind. Like I said from the beginning, when we came, a lot of things were in shambles. We needed to study them, gain insight into what led to where we were, what we met, before we can find a relevant solution. We have taken the last 1 year to do this. Now we are very clear-minded as to where we need to go. Education was in shambles, I keep repeating. But the story is changing. Like I said, we cannot remain at the level of lamenting, of condemning, of accusation, and all of that. We need to do something and place something on the table. You recall that sometime late last year, the governor of Benue State, Father Hyacinth Alia, introduced the Benue Education Quality Assurance. This was all in response to the need and the challenges that were in place. And we have a Director General who has been very active. We have worked together to identify the shortfalls of education, and we are recertifying. Certain models have been put in place where schools will meet necessarily before they are given a certificate of, we certify them. In other words, we are saying that they have met the basic criteria of operating an institution of learning in Benue. Until now, there were mushroom schools. Schools that nobody knew about.
Don't you think they still exist?
No, they do, because we cannot sweep them overnight. There has to be put a standard in place. And you know that the people who want to run schools are actually helping government, as it were.
So have you given them an ultimatum when it comes to standardizing them?
Certainly. But you see, we don't need to be in a hurry in order to eradicate quacks in the system. We need to take very careful steps. I speak from a perspective of humanitarian, as it were. If you, for instance, have the desire to make a contribution in the area of education and may not have all that it takes to run a school overnight, we'll give you, school's establishment takes stages. There's stages 1, stages 2, and stages 3. And all the schools have been made to pass through this. Those schools that had approvals only for stage 1 and 2, many have come up for approvals in the stage 3. So we are working in all of them. You may not be able to see them manifest overnight, but it's something that is holistic. It's something that takes time in order to build and to appear. Architects call the foundation substructure. When they are working on it, you hardly see anything. It doesn't make sense. But over time, you see the building begin to rise. And by the time they are done with the substructure, that is the foundation where they groom the building, so to say. They put it deep down there so that it can accommodate the massive structure that is going to manifest up there. This is where we are today, and that is where I can speak this kind of language.
Now, when I talked about quality, something came to my mind specifically. You must have been abreast of the news in just recently. One of the secondary schools, I think, the name has been mentioned, so there is no Sense, Academy in Jos collapsed, and till now they have not been able to ascertain the number of persons casualties. Now, you see some schools are operating in environments that are not healthy for the children. Now, the Benue people had expected that drastic measures would be taken so that people would know that this is a time for business unusually done. So at that level of decay, what are you doing in the interim to at least mitigate the rot that we have in
Thank you very much. I have personally gone out to inspect schools. I have personally gone with technical persons who have inspected the strength of buildings, especially those schools that were built in the 70s and 80s. In fact, I was here in Makurdi. I went to GSS North Bank. The school was built in 1978. It was handed over to the state government in 1979. When I got there, I saw cracks. And I asked the people, why would you leave buildings to be like this? They said they have never been attended to. I came back and gave a report to the governor. And instantly, the governor has given, in fact, the process is on, where the school will be renovated and upgraded and improved upon. In one of the places in that school, the hall, you know, the roof just caved in. And it was roofed with iron. We really don't know what happened. I could see shrubs and trees growing within, you know, the space of that room. So all of that will be taken care of. I was in Otukpo in St. Francis College, a school that was built in the 1940s when the missionaries came here. And all of this was to gain familiarity with the state of the infrastructure, which I kept telling you are dilapidated. And the present program at SUBEB that I'm talking about, in which every year new classrooms are built, old ones are renovated in order to bring strength back to them. But I keep saying that private operators of schools are playing a role that government needs to give attention to. In other words, they're complementing the role of government. So it's not about outright shutting down schools because they have not complied, but rather it's about enhancing their participation so that what needs to be done can be done correctly, and so that we can be certain. Fortunately for us, there has never been any case of collapsed school building in Benue. Yeah. But that does not mean that it may never happen. What happened in Jos is an eye-opener. As soon as that happened, I received a calls from a few people that we should give attention to this. And I said, yes. You know, like they say in one language, when the mustache of a person catches fire, you begin to pour water on yours in order to avoid, you know, that same experience.
It's all right.
Yeah. So it happened in Jos, and we have taken sufficient precautions.
I think we need to take a break very quickly, Honorable Commissioner. We'll be right back to continue with more questions in the House. As you are prepared to answer questions, so we are prepared to them out. So let's go on a break very quickly. We will be right back to continue with the program. Stay with us.
Benue Fashion Show Season 3 is here.
It's that time of the year for fashion designers, entrepreneurs, and fashion enthusiasts to shine.
This year, sale of forms for the competition begins from 15th April to 30th June 2024.
Pick a form at Benue Television, located at Special Duties Wing, Government House, Makurdi. Form cost 5,000 Naira only.
Stage 1 screening begins on the 6th of July 2024. Great prizes await you.
The first prize, 1 million Naira. Second prize, 500,000 Naira. And third prize, 300,000 Naira. All prizes are inclusive of cash and fashion too. Also, consolation prizes and gift items.
For sponsorship, partnership and inquiries, please call Benue TV Marketing on 0906 188 9838 or 0703 794 5569.
Benue Fashion Show,
embracing fusion fashion.
Welcome back to the program. This is Daybreak Benue, our flagship program on Benue Television. This is a place where we hold even the government accountable, and we also interact with people from all spheres of life to be able to bring to you what you need to listen and what you need to also watch. And so this morning we're playing host to the Honorable Commissioner of Education and Knowledge Management, Reverend Dr. Frederick Ika, is here and is ready to answer all the questions. Now, I think, Maureen, before we went on that break, you were quite eager to ask more questions. So please.
Thank you, Japheth. Honorable Commissioner, Dr. Kian, you said something about doing things rightly, correctly when it comes to private schools, because whether we like it or not, they actually complement government's efforts in providing education. Now, this goes to saying that this is a sector that needs to be properly enhanced. Now, in that regard, what are you going to do, or what are you doing specifically to ensure that private schools are giving out, quality education, as well as, even though we had some experts who said that education is not meant to be free per se, but actually supposed to be affordable. Now, what are you doing specifically to ensure that we have quality education coming from the private sector? Because whether we like it or not, we also have certain gray areas in this private sector education that needs to be attended to.
Okay, thank you very much. We are familiar with the system actually, where the private sector engagement has not really, it's not too commendable. There are shortfalls in spite of their sincere desire to complement government effort and to add value to education in Benue. For instance, during one of our outings, and even before I got into office, it's a common experience that some private schools used to engage secondary school leavers as teachers. Perhaps because they do not have sufficient funding in order to pay for higher level teachers with NCE and degree holders. So they engaged very brilliant young men and women where they just give them stipends, but they still teach. So this is a very serious issue that we have started looking into. There must be the basic minimum standards in everything that we do. So there is already a phasing out of that kind of experience, and regular monitoring. And the issue of recertification that I talked about has exposed us to this understanding, and this is what we are working on currently. Education must have a basic standard. If I must operate a school, I should be able to at least subscribe to that basic standard. Even if I do not start large, can start and grow in the process. There are 1,001 graduates that are roaming the streets. But because of the economic downturn of our country and of the difficulties associated, with it, most private schools are not able to pay as much as government does. So they are able to just hold people to themselves. It is not correct. This is one of the things we are addressing, presently. We must phase out such teachers and qualified professional teachers. And even in the professional teachers, we are also working on a program with NTI. I held a discussion with them in Abuja a few weeks ago, to the effect that we'll expose all our teachers to trainings that will introduce them to new approaches and methods of teaching, so that those old methodologies are no longer relevant. Today we're in an ICT compliant world where students can interact with their tablets, with their devices, and this brings me to the issue of smart schools. Today we are looking forward to establishing smart schools. In fact, there is one in Makudi here on Naka Road, established by UBED in Abuja. And if you go there, you will see that it's a complete departure from the traditional chalk, white and chalk on a blackboard. But the students, the little children, are engaging with technological devices where they are aware of what is happening all over the world. Private schools are also going to join because it's a standard. We cannot afford to operate two different standards, where government schools subscribe to a different set of standards and private schools do onto another set. It's going to be a common standard. We must understand also that this is a new innovation. It was not here before. We allow schools to be able to come up because we're a humanitarian, government that understands the plight of people, their feelings, their desires, their aspirations. We need to encourage all of them to subscribe to this new standard and model of learning. And we are taking this all the way from Abuja. You know, there is a new roadmap of education in Nigeria that Mr. President brought on board. It started from this 2024 and will end in 2027. So all of this that I'm saying to you is a package that is unfolding. There is no end to it yet. But these are some of the things we are doing in order to brush up private schools so that they can conform to the common standard that government has set forth. The Quality Assurance Agency that I talked about is charged with that responsibility of supervising and making sure that there is, you know, the schools conform to what the desire of government is. Because in the end, like I said before, we are no longer going to appeal to farmlands. The modern day farmland is the classroom. A child sits in that farmland, so to say, for 4 years or for 6 years, for 9 years, and comes out, and his skills or her skills will never depart from him or her for life. That is why we must give attention. In the olden system of farming, you could go to the farm, no matter how you do, you know, your farming, it is left to you alone. It does not connect you with anybody. If there is no yield, it is up to you. If there is sufficient yield, it's up to you. But in education, there is a global standard. You graduate here in Benue, in Makudi, you can go to America and compete with the world favorably. That is why we must appeal to those standards.
Very well then, Honorable Commissioner. Let's also take a look at the place of missionary schools in Benue. You know, these are legacies left behind by the missionaries. A lot of people in Benue benefited from the missionary schools. And these people are no longer there. They left structures for us. And most of these structures, when you go to take a look at them, they are in a form that is very, very pathetic. I want to say, most of them were also grant-aided.
Sure.
What's the place of grant-aided schools in Benue? And what is the place of missionary schools that were given to us freely by the missionaries?
Okay, thank you once again.
You're welcome.
I'll start with the missionary schools. As a pastor in one of the denominations in the NKST, we have 1,001 schools. If you go to the Catholic Church, they have 1,001 schools. Methodist, Anglican, these mainline churches, you know, all of them have schools. In Makudi, perhaps the most prominent in those days was All Saints Primary School. This is a mission school. If you go to that school, you see the massive land that the church acquired from time immemorial and built and operated that school, and it has come of age. So, missionary schools, even though the missionaries have gone back, the locals have taken over those schools and are still operating them very well. One significant feature of mission schools was the issue of morality, where morals were consciously, deliberately taught to the students, as against government schools that it was just mere education, and even though morals were not necessarily relegated, but they were not emphasized as much as in the missionary schools. For instance, boys were taught how to relate with girls in a manner that immorality will not creep in. In the government schools, sometimes they say that it's every man's world. You can do whatever you want. But we do know that these are not standards that our Nigerian society really upholds. So, but the emphasis was more in the missionary schools. We have a point of collaboration where from time to time we invite all of them. In fact, we call them critical stakeholders in the education sector. Mission schools are involved. We sit with them over and over and over to unveil to them new innovations that government is introducing, because government is the regulator, chief regulator of education in any state, as it is in Nigeria. So we are interacting with the mission schools, and each time we come, the various education secretaries of the missionary organizations come. The NKST, the Catholic Church, the Methodist, the Baptist, and all others, they come and they also share their concerns with us. Each time they come, they are concerned about the rising, tendency of the cost of education, and how we can mitigate and also reduce and also create an enabling environment where children can still go to school and learn morals. So we have carried them on, and we are also very happy with the progress. In the NKST, they have operated primary schools, secondary schools, and they also had a university. The Catholic Church is also in the process of floating a university. So you can see that the mission enterprise in education has not faded. It has not waned out. It is still on course, and government is giving them the needed support. In fact, the church has a wider reach and appeal to our locals than even government. You go to the remotest part of Benue State, where even government presence is not felt, you find a church. And wherever the church is established, you find a school, you find a hospital.
Yes.
So these two structures are always there. So it is not a sector that we can, push or shove aside.
Yes.
It's rather seeking further collaboration, which is what we are still doing.
Yes, but the reason behind the establishment of this school, some people think is defeated, Honorable Commissioner. Do you think education is, talk about the affordability of education in Benue? Because even in public schools, we hear children complaining, we're asked to pay for exams, we're asked to pay for these. Payments never end.
Sure.
And then there are also issues that you need to take a look at. Molestation and all of that still is ongoing in schools.
Yes.
What are you doing to stem that?
You see, we belong to a society that has an influence over everything that we do. So it is unfortunate that you cannot segregate. That is, by separating only the good ones and putting them on one side and the bad on the other. All of them will grow together. We believe in orientation. People are going to school in order to acquire knowledge and skills and the ways of life. So there will always be shortfalls. Always, whether you like it or not. Even in the Western world, I can boast that there are those shortfalls. I'm not emphasizing them by way of pride. I'm not priding in them. Rather, I'm emphasizing them because we are aware of them and they have become the goal of our work in order to face out some of these issues. You observe that some private schools are very expensive, and if you talk to them, they tell you why their school fees is that much. But what we are doing presently is, apart from regulating school fees, we also want to upgrade the standard of public schools so that the options become innumerable, so that people now know that if you go to a public school, you will still acquire the same knowledge. The curriculum is one. Perhaps it is the mode of communication.
Yes.
That's the problem. And like I said from the beginning, because of low motivation in public schools, quite a number of people decided to take their children to private schools where there was sufficient motivation and indeed supervision by the owners of those schools. But school fees is still rising, and we cannot shy away from this. Where we do not wish them well, I say we want their complementing government efforts, so we must give them the needed support, but tell them what we need to do, because we have only one curriculum. Now the story has started changing. Under this 1 year, like Morris did say, of the students that went for a debate, some of them are in public schools. And we are very proud of this. At the end of this 4-year period, both infrastructurally and systemically speaking, there will be such a huge difference. The glory of our public schools will be so restored that people have a lot of options. I went to public schools, never went to any missionary school or any private school. My children went to private schools. I carried them in my car to school every day, whereas we trekked to schools of distances of over 10 kilometers.
And carried slates.
Yes, and carried slates, you know. But today we are still engaging with society and are able to identify what the problem of society is, even though we didn't go to any nursery and primary private school anywhere, you know. So what we need to do and emphasize is the issue of curriculum and how every school can, you know, subscribe to that.
Welcome back to the studios of Benue Television. It's the flagship program here on Benue Television. We're looking at the education sector under Governor Hyacinth Umem Alia in a year. And so, the Honorable Commissioner of Education and Knowledge Management, Reverend Dr. Frederick Ikena, is here fielding questions accordingly. Now, Honorable Commissioner, before we went on that break, you were about saying something very important. I wouldn't want us to lose track of that. So could you take it up from there?
Okay, we're trying to establish the connection or the relationship of what we are doing between mission schools and public schools. So I had just finished making the point that mission schools have collaborated with us, and as a government we're interested in sustaining that collaboration. And beyond that, mission schools are a veritable ground for grooming children in this generation as much as they did in times past. But this does not mean that public schools do no longer appeal to the people. We want to bring back the glory of the public schools, not because we want to shut down the mission schools, but just so that there can be a lot of choices, a lot of alternatives. People can have a wide range of choices to make in order to, achieve whatever that they want to achieve in life. So this collaboration is on. We have been talking together. We have invited them to meetings in order for them to sustain the tradition that was bequeathed to them by the missionaries that came to work in this place. And I also talked about the development where the Roman Catholic Church in Benue is in the process of establishing a university, which is the peak of it all. The NKST has already established one as far back as 2005, which is the peak. And you see that these churches have primary schools, secondary schools, tertiary institutions that have culminated into a university. In fact, I understand that the first tertiary institution in Benue belonged to a church, even before government thought of establishing one. So the mission schools, the mission organizations have played a very critical role that must be commended, given support, sustained, so that we can move on.
That's right. Now, Honorable Commissioner, you talked a lot about affordability. So let me move a little bit from there. When you talk about affordability, that means also the quality of service delivery in terms of the education too is also paramount. Now, I stand to be corrected, but in those days, let me say from like 2000s to like 2012, 2014. From 2000, 2014. Or let me go back a little bit again. From 1995 to 2014, Benue State University was critically acclaimed for delivery when it comes to education. Specifically, our law department used to be the toast of the country. Now, from the little I've gathered in terms of data-wise, we have like a lot of universities for this year who are ranking. Currently, let me mention a bit. We have Covenant University, we have University of Ibadan, we have Futo, that's Federal University of Technology Akure, we have University of Ibadan, and we have Bayero University Kano. Now, BSU is our pride, and we have to do everything to ensure that this pride is, touted nationally as it used to. So what are you going to do specifically under your watch to ensure that Benue State University returns that glory it used to have in those days? Because those days, Benue State University students used to be proud. When you are asked, I'm a graduate of Benue State University, it used to be a thing of pride. What are you going to do specifically to ensure that Benue State University retains that pride of glory in terms of education, in terms of the student, and in terms of the management as well?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I like your question. You know that every tradition requires much effort to sustain. Funding has been one of the critical areas affecting our educational system. From the very beginning of this discussion, I told you that the governor of Benue State, Reverend Father Dr. Hyacinth Umem Alia, as soon as he came on board, the first commitment was to education, to move the budget from below 10% to 15%. In fact, previously it used to be 4 or 5 or 6, 7% at most. It is in order to address these critical issues and areas of infrastructure, of training, and all that goes with it. So Benue State University is a beneficiary of this commitment. For instance, only a few months ago, a new faculty was introduced, the faculty of pharmaceutical studies. It's a whole faculty that has been introduced. We are presently working on introducing the faculty of engineering, so that Benue State University can be an all-round university, and whatever course that you want. In fact, beyond all of this, we are also thinking of establishing a faculty of marine engineering. This because Benue State University is located by the coastal line, so it will be quite useful. It will be very easy, so to say. In fact, we're also thinking of establishing mining engineering, because these are issues that we have discovered that will go places. Students from these departments, people who study some of this, will actually go places, and a few others. We're already engaging with the NUC on some of these issues, so that the template that NUC has for the establishment of the faculties and of upgrading the system are conformed with. I happen to be the person doing this engagement, and sometime January this year, the governor was invited to Sierra Leone, to one of the universities, and I went with him together with the Vice Chancellor of Benue State University, Professor Tojo Yurapu, where we interacted with the university out there in Sierra Leone. And recently, the Vice Chancellor of that university visited Benue together with a team of professors who is one of our sons here in Benue, and that is working in that university. I've forgotten the name now, but I'll remember later and tell you. So there is a collaboration where the university sought this collaboration in order that they can also gain from what they heard of us here in Benue. And we are thinking of sending students to them. They will also send their students to us.
In fact, like an exchange program?
Yeah, something like an exchange program, where even teachers will go there to help. Their teachers will also come over here to be trained, to imbibe what we have here and take back to their own country. So Benue State University is already hitting back to its glorious days. Like I said a while ago, standards need to be maintained, and you must be deliberate about them before you can sustain them. Some lack of commitment at one point affected that growth, that upward rise and progress of Benue State University that used to be heard all over Nigeria. Even though I'm not a lawyer, but I used to hear of the pride that the law profession, the law studies, had in Nigeria. Once a student got anywhere and said, I'm from Benue State University, he was respected, not just because of the name, but because of the performance and the capacity that was clearly demonstrated in their engagements. So it is still on track. We are still discussing with the relevant bodies in order to upgrade the system again. And sorry, let me just mention more particularly.
Go ahead, please.
Like I said, we're interacting with NUC, the National Universities Commission, and they're giving us insights on how to improve. They gave me a document. It's like a checklist, what we need to do in order to upgrade the system. So we're not just talking theory. We're talking about something that is practical. There is a guide to it. At the end of it, it will be very clear that this is what we have achieved, and BSU will hit fame again.
It's okay. Honorable Commissioner, you know that school education was very interesting for the people, the young people particularly in those days, when you made reference to the 70s, and the 80s and all of that. I recall when I was told by my father that when once a graduate from the university, you take home a B2. At the point it was BMW that was given to people. When you pass jump at a particular level, you are given. So let's talk about incentivizing education. What can we do to encourage the people under your watch?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
One of the greatest needs that will sound like an enhancement and encouragement is the issue of scholarship. And the governor is vehement about this, the issue of scholarship, because at the point the thing ceased. And given the economic situation, the downturn of it in our country, the populace of Benue need an assistance. And the governor is very, very deliberate about this. He is very passionate about this. I cannot stress it enough that students from Benue need to be given the stipends of financial support both within the country and beyond. As I speak, a few students have gone out of the country already to to acquire higher degrees. And here in Nigeria too, the scholarship board, we're already trying to reposition it. The governor is trying to work at interventions that the federal government has made provision for. In fact, I myself and the two other young men, the DG of Quality Assurance and one other, charged with the responsibility of connecting Benue with the federal government intervention program that will fund students, so that parents who have nothing at all can still send their children to school and they will be able to pay. There are quite a number of interventions that the federal government itself is thinking about. We are already connected. In fact, Benue has already been enrolled in that program amongst a few other states. Very soon, I would love to come back again and tell you the practical workings of this intervention and innovation, how even you can also benefit from it. And if you have friends, they can enroll. Because of the economic situation, parents are no longer able to pay the school fees of their children. And this is where government comes in handy in order to cater for the need. We do know that free education may not be possible at the moment, but part of the vision of His Excellency Reverend Father Dr. Hyacinth Umem Alia is to achieve free education. People say, can this be done? We say, yes, it can be done. But the proper foundation and all that is necessary and that is needed need to be put on ground before we can achieve free education, especially at the basic education level. And when we achieve that, we can boast and say that education is free. Because when you graduate from a university with a degree, higher degrees now come at your own pace. Yes. You determine when and where and how to acquire them. But basic education is what cannot be compromised. So when we talk about free education, our aim is the basic education, because that's the basic level that everyone needs to come to. I have observed through my personal experience and that of others that the curriculum of the secondary school education is sufficient enough to propel any man or woman to any part of the world because of that standard, if you look at it closely. So part of the problem was lack of motivation. And today we are motivating teachers. We are asking them to go to school. Their salaries are being paid. Incentives are given. Retired teachers can also boast of their pensions being paid. So this has brought about a renewed motivation into the system. And I said before that today we are not just looking at everybody being a teacher, but we want to identify teachers from day one. As they enter school, everyone is able to choose that I want to be a teacher. It's a glorious profession. I will not end up being a teacher because I couldn't find any other engagement, employment anywhere. So when this is finally fully domesticated, we would have phased out quacks, we would have phased out people who do not belong to this profession, and only people with a passion. When you see a passionate teacher, you know the way of impartation is different. And I like this further because just 2 days ago, I had to visit one of the schools in order to celebrate, to felicitate with one of the students, Comfort Msushima Akwem, who on her own decided to enter into a debate even before the parents got to know. And she did very well, got to Abuja, performed well, and they went to the national one at Enugu just last week. And she came up tops. So I got to Jewel Model Schools here in Makudi, opposite the teaching hospital, and we celebrated her publicly. And very soon, I'm still in talks with the people in Abuja, the value added education sector somewhere in Abuja who will come to Benue, will celebrate this little girl. She's only 15 years old. Yes, yes,
you took the other ones to the governor.
Yes.
To have a handshake.
Exactly.
Are you taking this one too?
Certainly, that's what we are working on.
It's okay.
That's what we are working on. Presently, we are working on another set that are going to Hong Kong. 4 of them, they come from Federal Government College in Vandikia. They are Benue indigents. And because they are indigents of Benue, Benue State Government has undertaken to sponsor them on that trip. Wow. Because yes, we are not leaving it to the federal government to do, even though it is through the instrumentality of the Federal Ministry of Education that they emerged. But it has become our responsibility to send them to Hong Kong, and we are very confident that they will bring back the laurels to us. So all of these have served as a motivation.
Yeah.
It's also an example to others to see and to copy.
Very well then. And so how about the issue of the boards have been set up now for tertiary owned institutions. 2 days ago, precisely.
Sure.
Yes. The governor was to inaugurate the chairman and their members for the state-owned tertiary institutions. And in the past, I do not know what the board members were doing precisely, and so I can't give an assessment. But now that you are passionately talking about education in Benue State, have you been able to interact with them to give them what you feel should be the standard and the status quo?
Okay, yes, thank you very much. The boards were announced only 2 days ago, and their inauguration is going to be tomorrow, Friday.
Okay.
Yes, the governor is going to do the inauguration. It is at the inauguration point that the governor will spell out to them what the expectation is. But the good news about it is that some of them are university lecturers, some of them are professors, some of them are people who have an exposure, have gathered a wealth of experience. They know what education is all about. Being a board member is not going to milk the institution. Rather, it's about adding value to it. And this has been the underlying concern that the governor put on the table and recruited these members. So it will be said to them again. And when you go to any school, any board, when you get to sitting, it is about understanding what the challenges of the institutions are and what steps that can be taken to address. Government is a very large organ. The governor or me as commissioner cannot go to every institution trying to find out what the needs are, what needs to be done. So we have invited some of our people to sit immediately on those boards, look at the issues in the schools critically and report to us. If there are issues they can handle, say engagement of teachers or employment issues or standards that are being conformed to or not, they will report to us. Government is the one that owns the schools. So whatever shortfalls there are in those places, they are there on ground to look at things from that perspective and report to us. So it is not as if we have set up boards and then they are going to look for food in those places. No. But Japheth, I understand that in previous times, board members felt they were only being settled. They were like political settlements. They were like given gifts. They were like given food to go and eat. No, we are past that era. It's about value addition. And the way the governor handles issues like this, I'm confident that he will still put it to them. Whoever cannot add value to the institution that has been given to them, he should resign, and others can be signed on. And because of the political disposition of this present administration, the political will so far demonstrated and the commitment shown, I can assure you that whoever comes on board will very easily, naturally comply and subscribe to this new direction. Because the governor has been very selfless, has shown a lot of commitment, has been so very passionate. Even at night, you find him on the streets of Makurdi, inspecting projects, asking questions, interacting with the people. We are not coming here to praise the governor. I'm only telling you what he has done, his disposition to the issues at stake, and how it relates with the governing councils of the university, of the colleges of education, and the polytechnic. And that also reminds me that we have the Akawe Tokola Polytechnic in Makurdi, which was pronounced polytechnic by the previous administration. We got on board and discovered that the only thing polytechnic about that school is the name. Now we want to provide content to that name. So the rector has proposed a 10-school program for that polytechnic. Different courses, 10 faculties, as it were, where the school will be brought up to the standard of a polytechnic, and it will compete with any other polytechnic in this country.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Honorable Commissioner. How many departments, or let me say faculties, does the Akawe Tokola Polytechnic have at the moment?
No, for now there's no department. None. That is why I say the only thing polytechnic about it is the name. It is called Akawe Tokola Polytechnic.
Yes.
But for now it is still College of Advanced and Professional Studies in content that used to be. So we are now set to bring a new dimension altogether to that school so that it become a place of pride.
It's all right. Now, Dr. Ikan, I had a question here which I had expected a direct answer.
Okay, yes.
I asked if you are given the opportunity to place Benue
okay, yes,
on the ladder of academic excellence? We have 36 states and the FCT. Where do you think we will belong?
Well, it's a difficult question, but I can't avoid it. Difficult because I do not have sufficient data of the other institutions in Nigeria in terms of their performance. But from a subjective viewpoint, I say subjective because this is not based on verifiable data. But having been in Benue over the years and having been familiar with the education sector and now being practically involved in it, I can say that we're up to 60%. And that is where we are. And it's a responsibility to push this to 100%.
Okay, that's instructive, Honorable Commissioner. Now, I'd like still on the matter of governing councils. I want to border on Benue State University specifically. I beg your pardon. I hope I'm not sounding too biased because that's my alma mater. But that's just by the side. There is an outcry from public, or let me say from the public, about the appointment of the pro-chancellor, who is a non-indigent. It doesn't really sit down well with most of Benue citizens. Now, I'd like to get your perspective or your insight on that. Firstly, now, secondly, in terms of subvention and recruitment, because you said these are also content matters that the governing councils and their members will also attend to, and that seems to be a particular issue that has been, let me say, bordering in BSU for a very, very long time. What are you going to do to change the narrative in terms of that? Because let me just cite an example. The late Professor David K., who of blessed memory was passionate, very, very passionate about education, and took spent most of his time to ensure that Benue State University became a citadel of reference for learning in the country. I'd like you to get your perspective in terms of subvention and also recruiting for teachers, or let me say for lecturers, not teachers, lecturers in the university, and also your take on how come, or let me say, why the preference for a non-indigent as the pro-chancellor of the university.
Okay, thank you very much. I also have a feel of the reactions of people on the streets on this matter. But our own perspective to the matter is totally different. It's not about sentiments. It's not about tribalism. It's none of those. Even though I do know for sure that there are also eminent personalities who are indigents who can serve as pro-chancellors and chairman of council, as indeed it has been before. But this time the governor decided to break away, to bring somebody from outside who can bring another wealth of experience to add value to Benue. Some time ago, some professors were of the opinion that every vice chancellor of the university should come from that university. But it may not always be so. The present vice chancellor came from Jos, and I remember quite a number of people opposed his coming because they felt he should have been from here. But it has worked. He has done his work. He has worked well, as it were. So it's a clear example that bringing someone from the outside does not negate in any way the vision of that university. Secondly, you observe that our paramount ruler of Tiv Nation, His Royal Majesty, Professor James Otis Yozo-Ayate, is also a pro-chancellor of a university in the southeast. And this is the common tradition. It's nothing new. I really don't know why people have felt that it's not correct. But I've given the example of our own people. You remember that our brother, Professor Mvenaga Jibo, was also council chairman of the university in Port Harcourt. And we have had several of them like this. Maybe because not many people knew that there are Tiv indigents who served as pro-chancellors of other universities. I remember in the early 90s, the architect James Ugo was a university council member of University of Benin. We don't know how he got it, but it happened. So I think that we need to rise away from nepotism. We need to shift away from sentiments and appeal to standards. If anybody has a question against the competence or the capacity of that man, then we can talk about it. By the way, he himself is also a proprietor of a university. So he is well groomed, so to say. He knows the system because he owns one. And I do believe that someone that owns a university and is passionate about growing his own university cannot come to run down another. It's also a test of faith and of commitment to him as well. So I can encourage everyone on the street to be very confident that we have not deviated from any standard or from any norm. So what we have done is consistent with what has been happening. It has happened to our own sons, and unfortunately nobody decried it when Mvandagajibo was council chairman somewhere. Nobody decried it. When our paramount ruler was mentioned, pro-chancellor somewhere, nobody has condemned it. So why should it be now? So I do not think it's the best. Sorry, the second part of the question.
Yeah, it had to do with subvention and recruitment matters in
okay, yes.
the university.
Yes.
University specifically.
When I came on board, there was an outcry by ASU, the union, that they lack teachers. The issues of salary, issues of arrears, issues of employment, and I happen to also be a postgraduate, student of Benue State Universities. My 2 higher degrees were done at Benue State University, and I belong to the Department of Religion and Cultural Studies. So I'm very well familiar. I also did part-time lecturing in that department. So I'm well familiar with the environment, with the goings on, and all that goes with it. I can testify anywhere that the university lacked teachers. So when I came on board, the Vice Chancellor management team visited me and told me everything that I needed to know. And the governor is fully aware. However, we felt that until a council is put in place that will be charged with the responsibility of engaging teachers, it will be too bogus for us to do that from the ministry. So as soon as the council is inaugurated tomorrow, one of the first things they will need to settle down to begin to look at is the issue of recruitment of new lecturers. For instance, in my own department, we had only one lecturer in the field of Old Testament studies. That professor has gone to sabbatical, so there is no more teacher in that unit. Yet there are students. So it is a common example in some of the departments. If you go to psychology, we hear the same story. Go to sociology, we hear similar stories. To education, even in history and in English, and all of that. So we are aware that there is a challenge that we have on hand. But because, like they tell us, any problem known is a problem half solved. So we know where we are. And this will be one of the first things that the present council to be inaugurated tomorrow will have to act on. And I can assure you that by the next session, beginning, very soon, the next few weeks, which is already beginning, there will be sufficient teachers as we are able to handle the situation.
Wow,
Thank you.
This is indeed very, very interesting. Honorable Commissioner, we cannot thank you enough, because as busy as you have always been, each time we call on you, you are able to come here out of your tight schedule to speak to the Benue people. It shows you're passionate about the education sector in Benue. But I'd like to say, when you go back, please, on our behalf, speak to His Excellency that we need a university of core technology, science and technology, that is state-owned, not beyond the incorporation of additional courses at Benue State University. Let us expand the tentacles of education in the state. I know with His Excellency this is feasible. I would like to appreciate you so much for coming and for sharing insights with us. I don't know whether you want to say something about that.
Yeah, I didn't want to let the cat out of the bag at this point, but His Excellency, I told you that I'm already in talks with the NUC.
It's okay.
It is towards this direction.
That's great.
That because the University of Technology, as earlier envisioned by the first civilian governor of the state, Aperico, never really came to light.
Yes.
In the process of time, there were some other agitations that were hinted along these lines. It still didn't work. In fact, from University of Technology, University of Agriculture came. They have gone their way. It's a federal university. They have also changed their mandate. They are now a general university. Because we are the food basket state of the nation, it is our concern to have a University of Agriculture, apart from the University of Technology. So these are plans that are in the pipeline. And when next I come, I'll give you an update as to how far we have gone with this. But this, your aspiration here is already been addressed.
It's all right. Thank you so much.
Yes,
we want to thank you very much indeed, Honorable Commissioner of Education and Knowledge Management, talking about Honorable Dr. Frederick can, we want to thank you indeed for being a part of the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So this is where we have to say goodbye, but we cannot say goodbye without taking the papers. And so we will have to go on a break very quickly, and when we return, we will be taking the papers, and finally we call it a wrap on the show. So please stay with us.
World Health Organization statistics show that lung cancer is the second most common cancer globally. According to the organization, lung cancer accounts for about 1 out of 5 malignancies in men and 1 out of 9 in women. Dr. Moses Agua from the Department of Anatomical and Forensic Pathology with the Benue State University Teaching Hospital, who featured on Talk Health, said cancer of the lungs is real and is affecting more people due to genetic, chemical, and biological factors.
Lung cancer is real. It is preventable to a large extent. Only very few cancers have specifically known causes. We talk about mostly risk factors. 10 people are exposed to the same risk factors. Only about 2 or 3 may come down with that cancer. And this is because it is usually a combination of factors ranging from genetic, environmental factors like exposure to chemicals, exposure to radiation, exposure to certain drugs, and then when they combine with your genetic predisposition, then the amount of exposure as well determines.
Dr. Agua said cancer of the lungs cannot be easily detected as it takes between 10 to 30 years to manifest. He, however, said it could be prevented by lifestyle modification.
It's a general perception of the public that, look, we've been smoking, nothing has happened. But again, we've studied cancer, lung cancer in particular, and if you read the books, they say it's staying away from smokers, guarding against your occupational exposure to some of these things we've mentioned. You are on the way to being sure that you will not come down with cancer.
Benue Fashion Show Season 3 is here.
It's that time of the year for fashion designers, entrepreneurs, and fashion enthusiasts to shine.
This year, sale of forms for the competition begins from 15th April to 30th June 2024.
Pick a form at Benue Television, located at Special Duties Wing, Government House, Makudi. Form cost.
Welcome back to the program. This is Daybreak Benue on Benue Television, and we're looking at the papers briefly before we say goodbye. Let's first of all take a look at the Nation newspaper here with the banner headline saying Tinubu kicks off payment of 32 billion naira to students as loans. All right, now the writer says 103,000 applicants successful. Not institutions ahead. It's a new dawn, says NANS. And then Senate replaces Ndume as chief whip. And then 401 Oshun councils caretaker members resign. We are called democracy. That's all coming from the Nation newspaper.
Now from the Guardian newspaper we have the lead story. Nigeria needs 14 trillion naira deficit as Tinubu adds 6.2 trillion naira to budget. This is on page 6 of the Guardian. And then we have petrol landing cost surges to 1,117 naira per litre. This is on page 3. PDP governors slam Tinubu over Nigeria's mismanaged economy. This is on page 3. And another story here, one of the second lead stories. Ndume's demotion stokes warnings of collapse for APC democracy. So we're talking about here is on page 6. And the picture story is about PDP governors from the southeast who had their meeting yesterday in Government House, Enugu. That's
all right. And let's take a look at Daily Trust newspaper here. PDP governors worry over hardship, mismanagement of economy, frown at government's instability to resolve wage crisis, local government autonomy assured on us, and then we will respond appropriately, says APC. 250 repatriated Nigerians returning from UAE need come. Tinubu 6 Assembly's approval to raise 2024 budget by 6.2 trillion naira. And finally, NEF condemns eviction order issued Northerners in Delta. You can find stories on pages 6, 4, and 14 respectively.
Now from the Vanguard, above the newspaper masthead we have insurance assets hits 3.3 trillion naira, premium income rises by 51%. This is on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper. How weak institutions aid corruption, threaten democracy. This is from Ganduje, Kuka, and Yakubu. I want to believe that's INEC chair. This is on page 2. The lead story here: telecom sector hard hit by harsh government policies. This is a report with a rider. Harsh policies weekly purchasing power of telecom subscribers. Smartphone shipments shrink. I beg your pardon. Operators revenue dips. Nigeria's golden sector about to lose relevance. This is on page 5. Now the last one. PDP governors warn against presidential interference in Ondo gubernatorial polls. This is on page 2. And that's it from the Vanguard.
And so this is where we have to say goodbye. We must appreciate you for your viewership this morning. Tomorrow promises to be equally interesting. So join us tomorrow as Daybreak makes a return on Benue Television. Thank you so much for being there. My name is Japhet Kwaho.
Thank you for staying with us on the show. My name is Maureen Young. Do stay with us for the rest of the programs and have a pleasant day as well. Bye for now.